Onions, Chapter 10, City Hall. At school on Monday, C.W. spoke with Billy and Laurie and made plans for them to work with him and Mrs. Fuller on the following Saturday. They got busy making picket signs in art class. It was unusual for the school to allow any partisan politicking, but C.W.'s social studies teacher thought it would be a good lesson for the kids in learning how government functions. So, the following Saturday, instead of his usual work schedule, C.W. and two helpers were to meet Sandrine at City Hall at 10 a.m. with their picket signs and eager expectations. C.W. had rehearsed the two on the process, how to deal with the public, what answers to give, and how to handle negative comments. "Can't I just tell people who are pro-sports dome to take a hike?" Billy said jokingly as they finished making one of the signs in class. "No," C.W. said. "You've got to be professional, Billy. Keep a smile on your face. Just tell them why the sports dome is a bad idea, how it'll cost the taxpayers lots of moolah, and be a cash cow for Scriggins and his buddies." "What's a cash cow?" Laurie asked. She was tracing letters on a large poster with a black marker pen. "A cash cow is something that makes you lots of money, Laurie, like an oil well. In this case, it's what they call a kickback. Mrs. Fuller explained it to me. The way it works is the mayor gives the contract to build the dome to Zinnerman Construction, and in return for the favor, Zinnerman Construction gives the mayor and his buddies a percentage of the money they receive for the contract." "How big a percentage?" Billy asked. "Well, Mrs. Fuller thinks it's in the neighborhood of 10%. I think the bond issue is going to try to raise $200 million to build the dome." "Wow," Billy said, staring at C.W. $200 million? That's a percentage of about $20 million, Laurie said, beating Billy to the punch. $20 million profit, and the mayor doesn't have to do a single thing. "Yeah, it's pretty disgusting," C.W. said as he finished the lettering on a flyer. "Anyway, you're going to meet lots of interesting people on the street. Usually they're pretty nice." "Well, I'm scared to talk to strangers," Laurie confided. "I'm what you call a shrinking violet." C.W. laughed. "Come on, Laurie. You're good at talking to strangers. You were great with me the first day I got here." "Well, you're different, Charlie," Laurie said with a warm smile, patting his hand. "Yeah," Billy added. "Laurie can talk me into a coma." They all three laughed as the bell rang, ending art class. C.W. always finished his homework in half an hour, which left him the rest of the day to practice the trumpet. The next 5 days flew by. C.W. couldn't practice in his foster home, so as soon as school ended at 4 p.m., he hopped on his bike and zipped over to Mrs. Fuller's bungalow, where he buried himself in his newfound activity. He'd mentioned to Sandrine the work he'd done with Billy and Laurie making the posters, and how they were excited about working with him at City Hall. 10 a.m. the following Saturday was a beautiful sunshine day, and there was absolutely, lots of activity taking place in front of and around City Hall. C.W. and his helpers had shown up early to get ready for the day's protesting, but Sandrine was already there when they arrived. She'd set up 4 card tables with flyers and brochures piled on top of them, and this time she had a bullhorn. A KALN TV news truck was parked at the curb to one side. TV journalist Patrick Murphy was setting up in front of the TV camera. Murph was a seasoned reporter with an easy charm. He had a big following in Lozon and a reputation for being fair and giving both sides a chance to be heard. After C.W. introduced his 2 cohorts to Mrs. Fuller, she placed him and his fellow protesters in strategic locations a distance apart from each other on the sidewalk. Because of the camera and KALN truck, curious town people who would normally be doing their early morning shopping in stores surrounding the town square were gathering to watch the festivities. Laurie was nervous. She left her position and ran over to C.W. "Charlie, what do I do if they ask me something I don't know?" C.W. was strapping on his picket sign. "Oh, tell him you don't know, Laurie, and send it to me. I know all the answers." "Okay." She started to leave and came back. "I'm really nervous." C.W. laughed. "Don't worry, Laurie. As soon as you get your first customer, you'll be fine." Laurie nodded and headed back to her spot on the sidewalk, several feet away from C.W. Meanwhile, Billy was having his first encounter. Two middle-aged women had approached him, paused, and were studying his picket sign, which read, "The sports dome's a drag. Vote no on the bond issue." "The dome's going to bring lots of business here, so why don't you like it, young man?" the older of the two women said, sternly. "Well," Billy replied, sizing up his two inquisitors, "how much money do you have in your purse right now?" The older woman stared at him with a vacant look. "Well, what does that have to do with the dome?" "Because, my dear lady," Billy said, remembering to smile, "if you vote for the dome, it's going to end up costing you everything you have in your purse, including that stash you have buried in your backyard." The younger woman gasped and looked at her older companion. "How did he know you?" "Bertha, he doesn't know anything. He's just talking. Come on." The women walked away as the mature lady scolded her friend. Murph was finally setting up and ready to shoot. As the cameraman turned on his recording light, Murph began to spiel into the camera. "A recent poll in the Herald reported the majority of voters are overwhelmingly pro-domers, but, well, it seems we have a lone dissenter. Excuse me, 4 dissenters here in front of City Hall, and they're being led by Mrs. Sandrine Fuller." Murph strolled over to Sandrine's table, set up near the sidewalk in front of City Hall. "Mrs. Fuller, I understand that—" A breathless C.W. ran up. "We're out of flyers." Sandrine picked up some flyers from the table. "Here, take some brochures also." She handed the no-dome flyers to C.W. along with some business cards. "And tell people they can call the number on these cards and get all the information they need about what we're doing." "Okay," C.W. said as he grabbed everything, scooted over to his two helpers, and handed them the material. "Mrs. Fuller," Murph continued, "I understand from a few people I've talked to that you were a circus performer. Is that true?" "Yes, all my life, up until 5 years ago when I retired, but I've been living in this community a long time." As a man passed her table, Sandra handed him a flyer. "Vote no on the dome." The man stopped and studied the flyer. "Why should I vote no? I want to have rodeos here." You'll be lucky if it ever gets built. You're dealing with a group of snake oil hucksters who don't care about this community, only about ripping it off." Murph watched as the man moved off, then addressed Sandrine. "These are strong words," said Mrs. Fuller. The sports dome is a license to steal. Don't you know about the corruption at City Hall, young man? How long have you been here?" "Oh, not long. 6 months ago I was hired out of Scottsdale to come to Lozon and head up the new news team." "Well, then you have a lot to learn." The two women who'd had the encounter with Billy were standing nearby. They were staring at Murph and whispering to each other. The younger of the two approached the newscaster. "Excuse me, Mr. Murphy, could I have your autograph?" She held out a paper and pen. "Sure, here you go," he said, signing his name. "And be sure to keep watching KALN for all the news and latest updates on local and world events." "Thank you so much," the woman said, her face turning crimson. She hurried back to her older friend. They examined Murph's signature as they walked away. "Sorry about that, Mrs. Fuller. Where were we?" "We were talking about corruption. I've lived in this town for 40 years. Used to be we had honest people running things. People you could walk up to on the street, discuss town affairs. People who were friendly, who really cared about the citizens in this town. But since Scriggins took over 6 years ago, we've had one scandal after another." "Scandal? Like that $25 million the comptroller discovered missing during last year's city audit. Like the cover-up 2 years ago involving the Board of Estimates and those 2 city councilmen convicted of bribery. Like the parking meter thievery by Mayor Scriggins' brother-in-law, who's still wearing prison stripes who was still wearing prison stripes at the Florence facility. Evidently, he was on the work gang that helped build the new Highway 60, so I guess some good came out of it. During a lull in sidewalk activity, C.W. stepped over to Laurie's table. "How's it going?" Laurie smiled and shrugged. "Well, it's not as bad as I thought. They're only people. Most have been friendly, and I think I've made some progress. I told a young man about what's going on, and he seemed to be really interested. Said he was going to check it out for himself." "Great," C.W. said, looking over at Mrs. Fuller, who was pointing to City Hall. "Having that TV guy is great publicity. Come on, there's not much happening here. Let's go over and listen." C.W. shouted to Billy a few feet away. "Come on, Billy, let's check out the TV guide." "Okay," Billy said, dropping flyers on his card table. As the three kids headed for the TV truck, Sam Zinnerman, Councilman Bixel, and Bixel's wife, Marcia, came out of City Hall and approached a waiting limo parked in front of the building. Marshal Bixel was a stunning brunette, smart and sophisticated, tall, alert, composed. Her confident bearing was bolstered by her choice of clothes, a red pantsuit and 4-inch heels. Murph continued, "Do you have proof of those accusations, Mrs. Fuller, or are you... All you have to do, young man, is read the paper, back issues, court documents, and talk to townspeople who've been through this mess with me. The proof is everywhere you look." The crowd was gathering, watching and listening intently to what was taking place, which was great for Mrs. Fuller and her cause. She was handing out flyers at a quickening pace. C.W. saw the gathering crowd and hurried back to his card table, along with Laurie and Billy. C.W. was speaking with two young girls when he noticed Rock, the bully from middle school, watching him across the street with two of his pals. C.W. wasn't afraid of Rock, but he dreaded dealing with nasty people, mostly guys in school. As he watched, the three punks crossed the street and headed for his table. They were whispering to each other, pointing and laughing. C.W. steeled himself as the three approached. "Hey, look at this," Rock said, now at C.W.'s table. "It's Onions and his two wimps." Rock's friends laughed. "What's all this junk?" he said, picking up a flyer. C.W. was quiet as the bully's two buddies walked behind the card table and started picking up flyers and brochures, pushing in front of him and jostling him. Billy noticed and hurried over. "Hey, Neanderthal, why don't you and your two bisons go back to your cave?" Rock laughed. "You're pretty brave, aren't you, pipsqueak? You got all these people around you and you think you're safe, huh, twerp?" "Well, now that you mention it, I do see a state trooper standing over there by the news truck. He's got a great big gun, Rocco." Rock's two pals picked up some flyers and brochures from C.W.'s table and purposely dropped them on the ground, as Laurie, who just finished giving a flyer to an elderly couple, hurried over. "Rock, you and your buddies better leave. We have the right to protest here, and if you try to stop us, I'll tell that trooper. He'll take you down to the jailhouse. You want to spend the night in jail? Your parents won't be too happy if they have to come down and bail you out." Rock stared at Laurie, then shrugged. Let's go, guys. Let these losers waste their time. Sports Dome's going to be built no matter what they do." As Rock and his two cohorts walked away, Billy yelled, "So long, Rock. Hurry home. It's time for Mommy to breastfeed you." Without turning around, Rock gave Billy the finger. Murph had seen Zinnerman, Bixel, and his wife leave City Hall and head for the limo. "Hold on a minute, folks," he said to the camera. "Councilman Ted Bixel has just arrived. Let's get his reaction." As Murph approached the limo, Bixel, who was about to get inside, turned back. Murph shoved the microphone in his face. "Councilman Bixel, one of your constituents here says she doesn't trust the city's motives on the Sports Dome. What's your response?" Bixel wasn't prepared for the interview. He laughed a little too loudly and stared nervously into the camera. "Oh, really? Well, look, let me just say this, Murph. Everyone's opinion is important. This is a free country, and we honor the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. Yes, we do. We want every voice to be heard." He cleared his throat, then continued. "Now, Everyone may not agree with us that this is a good thing, the sports dome. But, well, we've done a heck of a lot of good R&D on this project, and I have to tell you, Murph, this sports complex is needed here. It's really it can really put our town on the map in a big way. It really can. Sandrine had appeared beside Murph. Our town's already on the map, Councilman. We're the most corrupt city in Arizona. Suddenly, the councilman's face was very red. I agree that in the past there have been a few rotten apples, but we've done a good job of cleaning up this mess. And why does Zimmerman Construction get all the city contracts? Why do I keep hearing rumors about kickbacks? Sam Zinneman, who'd been standing beside the limo watching, snatched the cigar out of his mouth, jumped inside the car, and slammed the door. Marcia, also standing at the limo door waiting for her husband, was staring steadily at Sandrine. Murph was thrilled with the confrontation taking place. He knew it would be great business for his TV station. He continued questioning Council Bixel. Well, what about these charges of kickbacks, Councilman? Anything to that rumor? Oh, that's just ridiculous, Bixel snorted. I don't know where this lady gets her information. Those charges are patently false. Really, Mrs. Fuller said. Let's ask Mr. Zinneman. Murph stepped to the other side of the limo just as Sam Zinneman frantically rolled the window up and waved the cameraman away. Murph and the cameraman moved back to Bixel, who was about to slip into the car. Murph stuck the camera in his face. Any final thoughts, Councilman? He asked. I want everyone to know that I personally guarantee this sports dome is on the up and up, and I'll do. Before he could finish, Marcia yanked him into the car. Inside the limo, the temperature was boiling. Bixel was so mad his wife was afraid he'd have a heart attack. Calm down, Ted. Why do you get so upset over such a little thing? Bixel was furious. Did you hear what she said? She accused me of taking bribes. Who does she think she's talking to? I'd like to... Yeah, who needs this? Zimmerman said with a sound that resembled a hiss. Marcia was staring at her husband. Ted, how many times have I told you to smile more and say less? Marcia, there's a lot of money involved here. We don't need some old broad mouthing off on TV. Yeah, Zimmerman added. That crowd loved her. She could be trouble. Why don't we just put a hit out on her? Marcia said with a wry smile, a statement which further infuriated her husband. Marcia, this isn't anything to joke about. Will you relax, Ted? She's only one person. She can't do anything. Well, maybe not, Marcia, but look, just to be safe, why don't you and your committee pay her a little visit? See if you can soften her up a little, huh? For me? Bixel's voice suddenly became a soft purr. Baby, okay? For me? Marcia's scowl was unmistakable as the limo sped away. Murph watched as the limo moved down the street and turned the corner and disappeared. Let's do that again. Murph watched as the limo moved down the street, turned the corner, and disappeared. He faced the camera. An addendum to our previous discussion between Mrs. Fuller and Councilman Bixel. Those rumors Mrs. Fuller referred to began 2 months ago when Arcan Construction accused City Hall of a bid-fixing scheme with Zinneman Construction, charges which are presently unsubstantiated. This is Patrick Murphy, Channel 10 News. Stay tuned for the weather. No one saw Mayor Scriggins emerge from the back steps of City Hall, get into his BMW M1 supercar, and speed away on a back road. Scriggins, who'd been watching the telecast from his office, had no intention of being questioned by a hotshot TV news anchor, not to mention an old lady who had nuts in her noggin. Mrs. Fuller. He vowed he'd remember that name and take appropriate action in the future if she continued to be a threat. After their day of campaigning, Sandrine and her squad called it quits at 3 p.m. She prepared a supper for her hungry helpers of hot dogs and hamburgers cooked on a grill in her side yard by the waterfall. It was the perfect end to a perfect day for everyone, CW and Sandrine in particular. It was a day they'd remember through the trying times ahead.